You are watching Access LaPorte County, Channel 97. Coming up next, the April 25th meeting of the Michigan City Historic Preservation Commission. You can find more information on this meeting by visiting www.accesslaportecounty.org.
Get going. I need a motion to accept the agenda. Oh, I'm sorry.
All right,
Yeah, I guess
we'll
I
go
got
through
it.
roll call here. Joyce Dalton,
Here.
Dan Granquist, Dwayne Hurt.
Here.
I'm here, John Hendricks, David Augustus.
Here.
Roger Potrat.
He's out of town.
Okay. Anthony Holt.
Here.
Andy Bowman.
Here.
Jonas Zimmerman.
Here.
Deb Parcell.
Here.
And Aaron Bornbrauer.
Here.
Did you say it right?
Don't worry about it.
Okay.
You got Aaron right over here.
Form.
There you go. Thank you. Okay, can I have a motion for approving the agenda, please?
I'll make the motion to approve.
Thank you. Second, please. Thank you. Dwayne.
What's I do? To approve minutes? No.
The agenda.
Oh, agenda.
And now we're going to have a motion to do the minutes.
Oh, there we go. I'll make the motion to approve.
Okay, thank you. Tony, and second.
I'll second it.
All right. All in favor?
All right.
Opposed, same. All right, thank you. Do we have any correspondence?
We do not.
Okay. So then we'll go on to the first one, which is 622 and 624 Franklin Street.
Yeah, that's me.
Okay.
Do we want the applicant to present first?
Yes. Would you mind telling us?
Just your name,
Yeah.
the address of the business,
Yeah,
and then just a brief summary of what you're looking to do.
yeah. So I'm Mike Morak. I'm with Simcoe Signs, and we're doing some new window lettering for listing leaders, and then also BlackRock for both real estate companies. So it's window decals. We were gonna, and then on BlackRock they did have an existing bracket that was projecting perpendicular to the building, and that would be made out of an aluminum composite material like this. And I also brought this sign in also as a double example where this green is the green that would be on listing leaders' windows. You know? So the brighter green is what's on the windows in there, and then in BlackRock it's just white and red, matte finish for both of for all of that.
Now, is this all the proposed lettering?
Correct.
This is the actual text that's proposed?
Yeah.
Look at the lettering.
Anyone have any questions?
Deb, you're next.
Okay, 624 is the first one, I guess, so, well, they're two separate.
Right.
Yeah, we will just need a separate motion for each, but we can hear them at the same time.
Right.
Okay. So obviously, same building, two different sides of the same building. So 624 Franklin's Spanish Revival, notable rating, built 1915 to 1920. So for 624 Franklin, the finding of fact, number one, the proposed replacement face for the existing sign is sized correctly and of a compatible color for the historic district. Number two, proposed vinyl decals will be applied to the storefront windows and door, sized appropriately and are color compatible with the building. Number three, vinyl decals are temporary in nature, easily removed, and will not damage the historic character of the property. So approval, denial of signs. As the proposed sign and decals meet the historic district guidelines and do not damage the historic character of the property, staff recommends approval as submitted. And then for 622, very similar. Finding of fact, number 1, proposed vinyl decals will be applied to the exterior of the storefront windows and doors. They are sized appropriately and are color compatible with the building. Number 2, vinyl decals are temporary in nature, easily removed, and will not damage the historic character of the property. So, approval or denial of signs. As the proposed decals meet the historic district guidelines and do not damage the historic character of the property, staff recommends approval.
Okay, can I have a motion for 624 first? Second, please. Thank you. All in favor, aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, thank you. Now I need a motion for 622, Frank.
Make the motion to approve as submitted.
Thank you. Second, please.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. And you're welcome to stay or you can leave, whatever you feel or desire.
Probably go, but thanks, I appreciate it.
Just to let you know, you'll receive a decision letter, and then you'll need to submit that with the sign permit, and just let you know the sign permit won't be issued until a business registration has been submitted for each business, as well as the property owner has submitted a certificate of appropriateness application for the painting of the stone that they did. Neither of those really involve you as a sign, but the permit won't be issued until there.
Sounds good.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're going to go to 433 East 8th Street.
Yes. If you could just introduce yourself and introduce the project.
Okay. My name's Lawrence Zimmer, and I'm the designer of the project for Katie and Josh Gondek, sitting over there. They're the owners of the home. They desire to build a 3-car garage with an accessory dwelling unit above it. So it would be a 2-story structure. What I did was design the structure so that it would be visually compatible with the house by keeping all the materials very simple, just a stucco structure that matches a portion of the house that's also stucco. It would be painted a color very similar to the brick of the original house. And the windows would also match the replacement windows that we were planning for in the front of the house. That matched in style and character. You'll note that we also chose to not match the existing roof line of the house. I felt that it would make the building quieter and less competitive with the main part, with the main house, by just keeping it a simple flat roof, so it just appears as a very smooth and flat facade, not draw any attention to it, but yet be visually compatible with it. As part of the landscape, we would also be planting trees between this structure and the main house that would act as a visual screen. And again, to diminish its size and keep it as far from the house and as visually quiet as possible. And I welcome any of your questions.
Does anyone have any questions?
Proposed height, 22 feet?
Yes. I kept it as low as I could to still make a functional garage space, and then the ceiling height of the dwelling unit above.
No questions? If that, you want to read yours?
Yes, and there's a few things that aren't included on here that I think probably should have been. I was not thinking about that when I wrote it, because one thing that would have to happen for this to be constructed is that the existing garage would need to be demolished. And that is not a problem, certainly. I came out and looked at the garage almost in February, maybe, I don't know.
I was gonna say, there
There was snow on the ground, but then it snowed in April, so I don't know. I feel like it snowed all the the time, but the garage that's there right now is very small. It's not in good shape, and I did take pictures of it, which are not in here. I just did not think about it because we didn't have it on this app.
Yeah, there are.
Yeah. So over time, the alley has been raised up from what it was, so water drains into the building. Has caused a lot of deterioration. So there's no question that there's a need there. I don't think that building's very safe to go into, and I didn't go into it personally, but just from what I've heard, I'm not arguing at all with that. So there are not a lot of things in the guidelines that address new garages specifically, except that they need to be subordinate to the main structure and of course be located in the back of the property. So what I compare this to is actually the Michigan City Historic Preservation Code. It gives more very definite points as to what to look at. So this comes out of the city code and the visual compatibility factors that we're looking at for any new project, not just for garage. So comparing it to that, that's separated here. Okay, so the findings of fact for this, the height of the proposed building is taller than most secondary structures in the historic district. The flat roof, I shouldn't really say it's not visually compatible, it's just not the same as the primary structure. To me, it's very different, but it does say visually compatible. I'm not sure that we can argue visual compatibility. A flat roof is compatible with like anything, so that's just kind of a matter of opinion, but it's, yeah.
I guess I also wanted to say that, if my clients, had the budget, we would love to have built a structure that matched the existing house. We would have
Yeah.
built brick, a clay tile roof, copper gutters and fascias, carved wood brackets, the whole works. It's beautiful on the main house, and we really like that. But it's just not within the budget to be able to duplicate that kind of thing for this new structure. So I forgot to mention that before, but I did want to say that.
That's a good point, yeah. Stucco is not the predominant material on the primary structure, however, there is stucco on the back corner, so there is a tie to that. The scale of the proposed building is very large, and it is, in that aspect, it's difficult to consider it compatible with the main structure because it is very large. Proportions of the front facade and openings and the rhythm of solids to voids and the entrances, the directional expression, those are all very good. The windows, those are compatible. So the recommendation, the proposed structure does not meet some of the visual compatibility factors for new construction in the historic district. It would be better suited to be an addition to the house, joined with some type of connector link, and you will find that in the guidelines where they talk about when you have a large secondary structure behind a primary structure, that a good way to do that then is to make it separate but have a connector link. So that comes from the guidelines. And the roof, if it could be lowered and changed from flat to hip, it would make it more compatible with the house. I understand there's budgetary concerns, but we're looking at the design, so that's what we're looking at. Staff recommends denial of the current proposed design and recommends the plan be changed to better meet the visual compatibility factors outlined in the preservation ordinance, as well as zoning and code requirements of the City of Michigan City, and that a new application be submitted for a revised drawing.
Does anyone have any questions?
I would note too, it could also just be tabled as is for a revised drawing, so.
Just to add to that, so the commission has three options. There is tabling it, which is best to say continue. There is denying it and stating the reasons for the denial. And there's also approving it, either approving it as it's submitted or approving it subject to conditions. I do not advise the approving subject to conditions. given the comments by Deb Parcell. So with that, and I just want to remind the commission that the requirements of the zoning ordinance are not underneath the purview of the Historic Preservation Commission. It is the guidelines as well as the Historic Preservation Ordinance, which is in the municipal code.
Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, do we have any, I know you said some recommendations, right? Any that's within the decent cost ranges?
Cost is not a factor of our decision.
No, I'm just saying for them.
Yeah, but it should not be impacting your decision making at all. Nowhere in our ordinance does it mention cost.
I understand that, but that's why I'm here. That's the only reason I'm on this board.
That's what he's asking.
I understand all the difficulties that people are faced with when they're trying to get things done. And I live here, so I want this area to look better. And so cost, it's a factor. That's the only reason I came to this board, because of cost.
Okay.
Make another comment. It would be very easy to put a hip roof on the structure. My concern is that if we try to mimic without matching, that it's going to draw more attention to it, and it's never going to look as beautiful as the original structure. So that's why that we decided to not try to mimic something that we can't duplicate. And I think if you put up a structure that would have that hip roof and the same overhangs and all of that, I think it's going to look odd and out of place, and it's going to look like we tried to match it and we didn't. And I think that could end up being more visually damaging to the historic nature of the property and the neighborhood than if we just made it a very simple, quiet structure that did not draw attention to it.
So you were saying that the recommendation is to have it connected to the main structure. Is that something that has to happen, or can they still?
It doesn't have to, that's just something that in the guidelines, it recommends that if they'd like to see it be, much smaller than the primary structure, but if a building is proposed that's quite large, then a better way to do it was to connect it through some sort of connector. It doesn't specify. So then it kind of becomes an
Yeah, because that would
addition to the
completely
house.
change their whole plan. I mean,
Right,
obviously they
it
don't
would.
want to do that.
It
So
would.
yeah,
That would be a different thing.
Right.
If that were to happen, it would probably move over. Well, as it is now, though, it does the edge closest to, is that Lafayette Street? I think pretty much the house and that building will line up. So it is like if you were in front of the house looking at it, it would be behind the house. So,
Eventually, the garage is going to remain off the alley, right?
yes.
What's the plan for the color of the
That we
addition?
would paint it a color that matches the color of the brick on the main house, so a light, warm beige color.
Would it match the stucco of the house?
We're going to change that so that it matches the color of the brick also.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Kind of conform.
Casement, windows, or double hung?
They'd be casement to match the
front?
eight pane
Yeah.
French windows that are on the front of the house now,
can't wait to see
including a
it.
French door for the mechanical room. And even though it's a mechanical room, I chose to put a French door on it because it relates back to the main house, the French door that's on the front of the house.
I like it.
I used to be able to go there for tea. One of the ladies from our church lived in that house
Awesome.
years ago. Yes.
That was his grandma.
Awesome.
Wonderful lady.
Yeah, cool. Great. Beautiful.
I've been in it too, only because I was at an estate sale there, so I had to go. I was like, oh.
She didn't buy anything, but she had to go.
Oh no, I bought all kinds of stuff. Are you kidding?
I will tell you, since we've been there, we've done some changes.
Yeah, I'm sure it's going to be really amazing though. Cool. Excited for you.
Okay. Sorry. Is there any other questions that you either have for Deb or for the owners? Okay, can I have a motion to what you're all thinking? Everybody's so undecided. I don't want to say too much, but to me, it would be,
May I make a suggestion?
yes.
Two motions. First is to either to approve or deny the demolition, and then a separate motion for regarding new construction.
Okay, so we're talking about let's talk about the existing garage right now. Would someone like to make a motion for that?
Make a motion to demolish the garage.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. And all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay. All right, so that's on the garage. Now, for the new one.
Make a motion to table it so that they can look at other designs.
Okay, I have a motion to table the new garage.
And before we get a motion, would you care to clarify any actual details, specifically towards suggestions or revisions you would like to see?
Say that one.
So, current part of the motion is to continue it or table it
Yeah.
to next month. However, this is best done with actual guidance, specifically, like somewhat specifics, whether that is, I don't want to put words in your mouth, how that connection should be, if it should be something else in regards to it, just additional clarification, so that there's more than just this roundabout conversation to go on.
Well, we have recommendations here too.
Or you can say as staff recommended.
What is this?
Now, if we were to recommend that, or ask that the roof be modified to be a hip roof, and would we allow composite tiles instead of clay tile?
Yeah, I would never consider asking for a tile roof. I mean, that's
Yeah.
just prohibitive.
Yeah, I know, but,
So-
you know, but the composite, the plastic ones are,
You could ask for that. I mean, I don't think that a color compatible architectural shingle would be out of order because it's a completely different building. You know, visual compatibility as far as color, I think, could be useful there. And I guess it would be important to see how high, if you were actually putting a hip roof on it, how high does that make it? Because we certainly don't want it higher than the house.
Yeah.
That wouldn't be good, or even within a little bit of the
or
house.
semi-mansard, you know.
So, you know, I guess you just have to see what the possibilities are there. I don't know the math on that.
However, this is still Dwayne's motion, so.
It's hard for me to make a recommendation to pinpoint.
Or you can keep the recommendation as is, the motion as is then.
Because what you said is you'd make a motion to table and follow staff recommendations. Is that
That's
correct?
good, yeah, that's good.
Okay, do we have a second?
I will second
Thank you,
the
Ingrid.
tabling of the.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same. Thank you. Okay. Now you can stay too, or if you want to leave, you can leave also.
I will reach out tomorrow, probably. Okay. Sure. When Deb is called. Okay.
Okay, okay, let me go into our maintenance review.
Take care.
Bye, thank you for coming.
All right, for your time this evening.
Bye, thank you.
All right, so we have 4. I'm going to go through these fairly quickly. 501 East 9th Street was a roof replacement, actually adding a layer of shingles. That was Amy's fine, so that was staff approved. 425 Washington was replacing the roof. It's actually, I think, already done. They're not that way. They did get their approval first, though. So that was an in-kind replacement as well. 502 East Abe Street was creating a parking area off an alley for the rear of the property using blacktop. There's a photo of it showing it's just grass. It meets all zoning code requirements. That was staff approved. And 510 East 9th Street was also a roof, and they were replacing the existing EPDM roof with in-kind, and that was just a replacement. There's a small photo of it, you can barely tell it's actually even there, and that was approved as submitted by staff. Approved as submitted by the applicant, approved by staff. Any questions regarding those four that I went through it like in a minute?
Question on one that's already done, no? Too late now. Yeah. Sorry guys, this chair's,
Oh, no.
I thought it was my back the first time, I was like, ooh.
Made you hurt then. Okay, any committee reports, which,
I don't have it. Sorry, in a minute, so.
okay,
All right, so for own, this is really all me, this entire section. So for commission training, don't really have anything, just in general, just make sure when you're making a motion, it's clear what you're actually approving. If it's as staff recommends, make sure you say as staff recommends or actually read out that portion, especially if there's conditions in there. If you're denying something in your motion, it has to include why we're denying it. So that did start including findings of facts. It's a little bit in the early stages, so that'll probably be tweaked, so you can partially use those for that. Also, continuing table, a person preferred continuing, just because you're not kind of shoving it under the table. And it's always best to actually ask for permission before doing that. It's not necessarily a requirement, but it just shows that, you know, trying to work with them as much as possible. And in the case where someone says no to that, you can do it anyways, or just deny the application for that. Hopefully that does not actually have to happen ever, but just options for the commission. The policies and procedures, which is this page, we've been working on it for the past couple of months. For the commission workshop, I did add that this applicant presents first, that's number 3 for the public hearings. Also added in number 3, the commission presents the commission. The applicant presents the commission, that's something we did today. The applicant goes first, and that can be just a simple introduction to a more detailed scope of that. So, does anyone have any questions regarding this, or would you like me to go through it from the beginning, or, because it also does have on the other pages, public comment and testimony, historic preservation scope, which this specifically calls out the historic preservation ordinance, which we did use as part of one of the staff reports for the property earlier today, but that also does include the guidelines as well. It's kind of the ordinance is authorizing the guidelines, but the guidelines don't necessarily supersede the visual compatibility standards as well. And then there is at the very end, the commission scope does not include the following, and that's 7 items. Cost.
And you see number 7 is cost. Okay. Note taken.
And when I said it's not to, it had nothing to do with a decision, it's just for them.
Yeah, the issue of that is, so we're a quasi-judicial body. Essentially, this body is a court. And so, the reason for it's razor focus and like not counting zoning issues or costs, because costs are built into the ordinance. And in places where I work where they are built into the ordinance, it's usually a separate application on top of that. And for new construction, they would never be a consideration. That's where you can have economic hardship, and you can factor in when it becomes about like windows or siding or other elements. We never have that as a part of new construction. whether it's on the existing property or it's for a brand new house or any capacity with that. But our ordinance is basically a copy of state law. So there isn't anything unique in our ordinance, and if there was something unique in our ordinance, it would likely be not conforming with state law, and we would need to change it. Because state law is where we get the ability to govern. So that's the reason why. And so every commissioner's decision-making, as well as staff's recommendation, needs to be based on what's in the guidelines and what's in the Historic Preservation Ordinance. The Historic Preservation Ordinance authorizes this body to exist, as well as the guidelines to exist, because those compatibility standards are roughly vague. So you need additional guidance for when, you need like windows. What is the replacement policy? How those get replaced and everything goes with that. Because if you're relying on these 11 standards, that allows for a lot of room for interpretation. So the guidelines are meant to kind of, make better decisions, more consistent decisions, while these are meant to be the fallbacks. Everything should be factoring in these, but the guidelines should already factor that into it. As they're written by Neil Lombark, so I'll put that person on the spot.
Yes.
Every community is using the same state law, and basically a carbon copy of it, aside from maybe a few municipalities who have enacted it beforehand.
Right. South Bend and Bloomington, they're the only two in the state of Indiana because they had commissions before the enabling law occurred.
So they're special.
A little bit different.
We're not. So
Theirs
that's
are even more rigid, to be honest. So, yeah, it's
all right. So that's a good thing we work first.
Yeah.
In that regard. So I know we've had a couple of months with this, made changes. Is there any, want to have any questions about it? Want me to kind of go over anything that isn't 100% clear? The only change was, from the last meeting, was the applicant actually presents first. I know you weren't here.
Yeah, I'm still learning. I get through all this. It'll take me a little bit, but I'll get it. But is there anything, and I want to ask you since I'm new, is there anything like, and I'm not saying to do better because this is my first time being here, but that I should do as far as like, I mean, I've studied obviously what's coming up, but just to, is there anything you can advise me to be on point with, or?
As long as you read everything that you get.
Yeah.
And you have it kind of organized with the agenda, basically, you're good.
I also included the draft copy of guidelines.
Okay.
Deb ourselves working on a final copy of that.
Should be done this week, off to the designer. So
Okay.
it's very exciting.
So
We are very close to
Will be
having
done
that.
very shortly.
It's looking very cool.
So those are the guiding requirements. Also printed the Historic Preservation Ordinance, which is a lot of legalese there. I read this stuff all day, so it doesn't bother me, but that's kind of what the ordinance that created this commission, created the districts that we have, created the ways that we operate, basically our Monday evening.
Right.
Decade ago, or at least 2 decades. Decade and a half ago, somewhere around there?
Yeah. it's-
All right, a while ago. And the policies and procedures here is really just kind of give some additional structure, kind of help with some of the larger projects that are probably coming our way, as well as just to be always mindful of what the actual scope is, and making sure we're not like going outside, because there will be instances where if it gets into zoning, and zoning is where it regulates setbacks, the use, those aren't the purview of this body. That's would be ultimately the purview of either the staff, that being me as well, but Scott York, the director. If they needed a variance from any of the zoning requirements, that goes to the Board of Zoning Appeals. If it's brand new construction entirely, and within the historic districts, it also goes to Planning Commission for approval, but they're only looking at it within Article 13, which, just for your education, Article 13 in our zoning code is a form-based overlay. Form-based is meant to regulate basically how buildings look, how large they are, their massing, some architectural elements there. So the historic preservation still applies, but this also applies as well. And so for new construction of larger projects, they would go to the planning commission for final approval. So, but they're still going to come here because if it's in a historic district. This code for Article 13 does extend beyond downtown, includes some of the areas outside the historic district. So the ones outside the historic district wouldn't come to this body, but the ones in the district would. So, for example, that would be, we had one last month for about East Lawn, or the month before. We're doing last month, the Fifth Street.
Last month?
It was last month.
Okay, yes.
So on West Fifth Street, that was new construction. If that were approved, it would then go to development review, which is just an informal meeting to get all the various departments of developers know what to actually have to provide, and then it would go for planning commission for final approval. But that wouldn't apply for residential, like strictly like single family homes, a garage, for example, an addition. So there's lots of different things that aren't under this body's purview but other commissions and bodies have purview over, at least to a limited degree. If that made any sense.
Are all of those details and all of that information available on the eMichigan City site, or is that something that you guys have been working on too to make it more accessible to everyone? Here, Amy, it's right here. Okay, thanks, Aaron. Okay, I get it.
So some of those details aren't quite as relevant.
Okay.
Because, for example, if you're in a historic district, we're going to come to this for a preservation commission.
But how are they going to know they're supposed to come to the historic preservation?
That is on the due diligence of the property owner to ensure that they're submitting everything as needed.
And, okay. I think there's a big gap there.
We did have a few years ago where we asked realtors
Yeah, that's what I
and to please notify people who are buying in the historic district of the regular, our rules and guidelines that, and nobody ever did. So it made it hard for
so much easier for everybody
Yeah,
if
it would
everybody
be.
knew what the heck they were getting into before.
Right.
And it's hard to say no because we want to see development.
Right. It feels so bad for them, but
Right.
but it needs to be right, you know.
So dumb question, so realistically, those people building that garage, they could go and do that.
If they were outside of the historic district, yes.
But
They
as long-
still can
But as
go
long
and
as
do
they're,
it.
as long as they're outside of, I mean, if they went and did it, what
Yeah, what are the repercussions?
what could we do, I mean, as far as like, is there, what would be done, you know, I mean,
They didn't get a building permit, number one. They'd be in trouble.
Yes, so that would trigger code enforcement whenever something's done without a permit. Usually the simplest way is just to apply for retroactive approval. However, if that is ever the case, that doesn't mean you still need to approve things that are within the guidelines in the historic preservation ordinance. That is how that actually turns out in practice, I can't say, but it would be mostly a code enforcement issue until they went through the process. But technically, per this book, you can actually order people to demolish buildings.
but I was just wondering if it was, I'm not saying it's like a homeowner association, but in a homeowner association, these people built a shed and it didn't coincide with what everybody else did, and then you're with that thing like, we can make them tear it down, it's like, you know.
So, we are not a homeowners association, we're a regulatory body.
Yeah.
Just as a part of the standard planning and permitting process. So we're not doing anything, this is a regulatory process.
Right.
And I would actually say we greatly supersede whatever an HOA can possibly do.
Well, that was just kind of as a comparison for me on that level of, we could actually make them tear it down.
It's an excellent
if it
comparison,
was,
yes,
you know.
because it's similar. You already have the ability through the state enabling ordinance to assess a fine, and it racks up quickly. It can be anywhere from $10 to, I think, $250 a day for doing something without permission, something that violates the guidelines. And or you can tell them to remove whatever they did.
Okay.
So
So if they
just,
buy new windows and those windows aren't compatible, you can take those ugly windows out.
we just did that
But
last week.
it would
in
have to be
Elkhart.
zoning though that issued a stop work order or something.
Yeah, so
you could-
planning and inspection would be the enforcing element of that, because this is a part of the planning department, historic preservation. Just zoning is, zoning is the majority of planning. Majority, but it's not all planning. So they would be doing that, at the speed it happens or the rate it happens is another story. However, everything is subject to the same enforcement. Some things just take different priority just because of limited staff resources.
I just wanted to ask how that works, so
Yeah. So it's supposed to have your approvals ahead of time.
yeah.
Or you start Friday night after the office closes.
That's what happens.
And then you continue till Sunday night.
Move up.
You know,
This is for the honest people.
Yeah.
Something's really,
Yeah, there's one right
Yeah.
now that I can, every time when I go to church, they're there all, but they're never there during the week.
These COAs, the copy that we have here, is this the same thing that the homeowner gets?
No, so they can request a copy of the staff report, but they're provided a decision letter.
I was just saying the name on there, we still have the old name on it,
Right.
so it doesn't matter.
They're provided a decision letter, which is basically a carbon copy of, so I actually know what pages I've been grabbing. One of these pieces of papers I have that has the staff approvals on. Some language has changed just because it's approved by a commission, but that was the simplest form that kind of gets the point across with that. So it states that at the very end, if you have an approval, you can go and include this with your permit. If you have an approval conditions, consult with staff before submitting your permit just to make sure the conditions are being complied, and then approve that letter. And then if the project was denied, it says you can appeal it through the court system, because our decisions are final. And then if they want to appeal it, they have to go to court for that. So it's the same as planning commission as well as board of zoning appeals. So our enabling legislation behind planning commission and board of zoning appeals is different from this body's, but the decision-making process in the appeal is the same. So we kind of got off tangent there.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
Yeah, that's fine. Does anyone have any questions? Can I get an approval by chance? Maybe?
I'll make the motion to approve the policies and procedures as printed, however you want me to say that.
Thank you, Dwayne. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, same. Thank you.
And so the next, this was brought up towards the end of the meeting, doing hybrid meetings. There's been some discussions that the state enabling to allow this may be changing. So I recommend that we just hold off. Because if it does change, then we have to change ours to be compliant. And if the state gets rid of it completely, then the entire policy goes out the window. So that's just continued the next month. And there's nothing to vote on that.
Okay.
Okay, under new business. I don't know if anyone's getting any questions on 902 Franklin Street or not, but why I am, I have no idea. But people are quite concerned is why is that it's the,
I get them every day.
Oh, the Pearl?
yeah.
At the flower shop on 906, when people come in, they're like, what are they doing? And I'm like,
Patrick's.
Yeah, I was just gonna say,
Yeah.
Isn't our friend, isn't he the one working on it?
no, the guy that owns
Architect?
Patrick's owns that building is what.
Owns Oriental
Yeah, isn't
Pearl.
Roger working
Owns
on
the
it?
building.
It was supposed to be a commissary type kitchen.
Yeah, but all of a sudden they're not doing anything and now their graffiti's getting written on it.
Well,
That's been there, the graffitis.
But the 902 is the one on the corner
Right.
that the car ran into and the.
Oh,
no,
that's
no.
920.
That's not.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, yeah.
Oh, that's okay.
So that question to me was, well, how long does a person get to leave that look like that. I said, you know what, that's an insurance issue.
Is that code enforcement too?
That is code enforcement.
Okay.
What are we talking about now? Are we talking
The
about
diner?
the
Yeah.
The diner.
Chinese restaurant or?
No, the diner on the corner of 10th and Franklin. That the car ran into the side about 4 months.
Yeah,
That's the same one that you said needs to be, visitor
what
center.
does code enforcement say? Does code enforcement address an appearance? Now, code enforcement didn't do anything when, the 11th Street Station sat vacant for years and the plywood was withering away and garbage was piling up. Maybe I should shut my mouth.
So I will have to reach out to code enforcement to see where the status of that was. I know that we did discuss this a couple months ago, and I did request that code enforcement start the proceedings. I will follow up and see what the status of those are. And just for the board's education, code enforcement is a lengthy process because there's procedures you need to follow to meet state law. So it's very rarely is ever a, let me just call someone and it gets done. There's usually there's noticing requirements, and usually that may take a couple of times, and then there's periods to wait.
Can't you just like call out the owner, like embarrass them, to put a picture of their building up on social media and say, look at what they're doing to our city, they just won't fix it. Help. Yeah, oh, I guess
She could do that. couldn't
I
she?
do that.
actually,
Not in the name of the historic
No, but I
preservation
can
council.
just-
but-
from being, from being right there and knowing other businesses and people that have restaurants, I heard that he wanted to do something in there. Something went wrong with, not with us, but with something else. And so he kind of,
Are you talking about Patrick's?
yeah,
Yeah,
the Oriental Pearl, not the other
Yeah.
building, but the Oriental Pearl, I was just saying that. And so he's, I'm not gonna do anything with it right now then.
they had to replace the kitchen floor and things
Yeah.
like that. So-
Yeah, guys in there gutting it. I mean, like I said, I'm right there, so a couple times I walked over there, kind of just
Nosy.
But I said, "What's he doing here?" Gonna make apartments upstairs, garage downstairs. But then he decided somebody wouldn't let him do. Again, so he just said, "Kind of screw it. I'm just gonna leave it." And
Oh, good.
kind of like an "I'll show you" kind of thing. But I guess if that's one term.
I wish Roger was here, because he was,
Yeah. Maybe you could call him when he gets home.
And you don't have to worry about those people building in the middle of the night because I'm at my shop at 4 in the morning. I'll see everything.
I know you will. Got eyes in the block. Anybody have any other questions or comments about that? Kind of like putting on my friend here. Okay, and since we have no public here, we'll skip number 10. Anyone else here have?
What was the new business? I mean, just discussion?
Yes.
Yeah, because we can't, nobody else is getting any comments or questions about it.
How about
Yeah, I
those? Yeah,
wanna
no,
talk
I
to
haven't heard anything about those buildings, but,
Oh, you have something else?
but no, but it's not on here, so.
So there,
But-
commission and staff comments does allow for some. It just needs to be in a commentary nature.
Right, and we can't vote on, so
Yep, nope.
you don't want to comment?
You're more welcome to email me, and
I will email Aaron and maybe we'll talk about it next month.
Okay,
especially if it's a lengthy discussion, if it actually requires discussion.
and we need to be aware to do that, because
That's
just
why-
like those two buildings, I didn't know Patrick's bought that one. Not that it's my business, but I'm shocked that he's just gonna leave it since he's got it.
he's owned it for a while.
But I'm shocked that he's just gonna leave it and not do anything, since he's got another building that looks very nice.
Land banking, you know, it's banking. He's gonna wait till it appreciates to a certain degree. Get rid of it.
Yeah, you're right, probably. Anybody else have any comment?
I have a couple of quick things.
Okay.
And if anybody wants a road trip, I'll just throw this out here while I'm pulling out what I want to look
Smart
at.
town. No.
No, although I did ask about that, but that's not in my area, so don't not gonna know too much more about it. Angola, if you wanna hop on US 20 and make a trip east, is having a speaker, and they will again be in Kendallville later this summer, but it's someone who has helped with redevelopment of downtown Van Wert, Ohio. They have done some amazing things down there, where they had a building collapse, and that kind of spurred everyone to action and said, we need to do something. And so it's some kind of a public-private partnership. They're pulling in grant money as well. I don't really understand the whole story, that's why we're getting a speaker. But one of the people that was part of the private financing for it is going to be presenting in Angola next Tuesday evening at 7 o'clock, 6:30. 7 o'clock, I think. I'll send you the invite.
Okay.
But I think it's going to be really, really interesting to hear. So they're having their restored historic theater downtown. There's popcorn, and yeah, I think it should be good. So we're just trying to reach out to commissions. I know it's a drive, but it would be interesting to hear. So there's that. Just in response to discussion earlier where we were talking about continuing a motion or continuing a COA until the next month. I thought this was true, but I wanted to look it up. In the state enabling ordinance, you do have to get the applicant's permission to do that. And a lot of commissions actually have a form and make them sign it, so they can't go back later and say, well, we really didn't want to do that. But anyway, you do need to ask their permission, because they can say no, and that's the end of it.
To table?
To table something, you have to have them agree to it. So that's in the state enabling ordinance.
So if they don't, then what do you do?
Then you deny it,
You have to make a decision, yeah.
because then it's yes or no.
Okay.
Well, I was gonna ask him how long, so then, I mean, I don't know if they know what the next step is and he knows what the next, they walked out knowing what they were doing, or if they're gonna call you and go, okay, now what exactly what do you want from us?
They need
Or,
to talk with staff.
Okay. And then how long do they have to the next month?
30 days.
Or they have 30 days, okay.
Yeah.
And you told them that, right?
No, I haven't told
I
that.
thought you-
I said I will contact
Oh,
them.
I knew it was something, you had a conversation,
Yeah,
something.
because you need to talk to both of us, mostly Deb.
I'm sorry,
Regarding
Ms. Dad.
Yeah, thanks.
regarding
Appreciate
that,
that.
so now, I can prepare a form if that is the desire of the commission.
It's a very simple little thing that I've seen others use. Some do, some don't, but you definitely do need to get the
And how often
permission.
does that happen? I mean, does it happen often that you? Yeah.
We can have,
Yeah.
A couple times.
and it wouldn't be, and you wouldn't be voting on it because I have to create it, so it's just guidance for staff to create something. Make it look nice, obviously,
So you'll have that ready for us?
Yeah, so I'll add more work to myself.
Nothing else to do. Yeah. So that's one. And then finally, 2 months ago, whenever we met virtually, that was 2 months ago, we had somebody join in,
Yes.
Mickey Vinson, I think, was asking about the Valentine Diner and wanted me to bring it up, which I did. We talked about it a little bit, and then because it was a virtual meeting, he didn't feel really comfortable jumping in and talking, wasn't sure how that worked. So he reached out to me last Friday and just wondered if anyone had heard any more about it. That's a real passion. He's wondering,
That's a 920.
is that the 920?
Yeah,
Okay, I didn't
920.
know that. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I don't know my addresses. Okay.
I wish.
Okay, well, don't have a lot to tell him.
I mean, through just, the grapevine, a friend that I know has said that, don't worry, it's gonna get fixed, it's gonna get fixed. So he acts like he knows who owns it, that it's gonna do something with it, but that was a few months ago, and it's just
I
like,
thought who owned it lived in Chicago.
I don't know who owns it. I don't remember the name of
is,
it.
okay.
It's a Burgerson.
As I will, that's what I was.
It's a Burgerson.
I think if you leaned against it, it'd fall over.
Take it apart, it's a
There's still the barber chairs are still in there.
Yeah, somewhere, yeah, that's, I think that's kind of his thought, is it should be moved out of
I
there.
think it should be,
Yeah,
or
because-
established and
Yeah, something.
we have to back
He's
to.
kind of urging us to see about it as one of our 10 most endangered. I'm
Well,
not
see,
sure we're
that's
gonna pursue that, but
people that
it's,
call.
it's
Now,
not.
2 people gave me their names, but others won't.
Have an honorable list.
There you go. Honorable mention for 10 most endangered. Okay, well,
It does look
still a
bad.
conversation
Yeah.
anyway, to know, so.
The other thing, it's not anything to do with us, but people are driving down 11th Street and then they bounce their car off.
Who the hell is trying to do 11th Street? Are you kidding?
I almost get hit.
Are you kidding?
Yeah.
Crossing 11th because
Yeah.
people are just flying down the tracks.
Because they figure
I'm telling.
you're gonna stop.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'm telling you.
Pick up
Every
trucks
day.
and
I
cars.
mean, I've watched people just flying through the stop sign because they're like, no one's on 11th, who cares? We're just
No.
gonna keep going.
Cars are
But
flying
I
down the
have not
tracks
seen
down
that.
11th
Yeah.
Street.
I have not seen
You
that
should see
yet.
how they fly down 10th Street.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah, I do.
You think that,
But if you're
11th
ever
Street
at
is-
the
this probably works.
look
They got
out
traffic.
and see if you see. Because then when they get to where they're going and they bounce down, oh yeah, it's gonna tear the car
Wrecking
up.
the heck out of the car.
I guess we won't have to worry about them.
No, well, they'll probably come against the city.
Well, they're still coming the wrong way down
Are they?
Franklin. Oh, yeah.
And I just don't get
It's
that
gonna get
because
really bad this summer for.
because there's signs on
They don't look
every
at
one of those.
Yeah, the 11th Street,
They
the
don't.
stop sign, now you're like, well, this is crap, nobody can come this way, and then the 10th Street stop sign, I'm like, what the hell is this for?
Yeah, you just kind of, it's an afterthought.
I miss that so many times, because I come out of the alley by the flower shop, and I go through that stop sign on 10th Street, because I'm just like not used to
Well, we
stopping there,
never
you're
have
like,
stopped there.
yeah, you're like, oh,
Yeah,
crap.
there's nothing that's not there.
Yeah.
They're controlling traffic.
People are looking at you like, sorry, like, my bad.
They're trying, yeah, I agree.
Just
Yeah,
don't
well, they're
drive
gonna
down
have to
11th.
do another traffic study.
Maybe you could suggest that.
Oh, I have.
You go to the meeting and you would
I'm not
suggest.
going to.
Okay.
Go to Board of Works.
They had a question and answer page on the website where people can submit questions regarding the 11th Street project. And one of the questions I submitted was, how they were going to deal with traffic. Because there's going to be an incredible, especially if they're putting 230 apartments, an incredible amount of traffic.
Yeah.
And the answer I got was they did a traffic study. Now, the traffic study was based on them having a parking garage,
Yeah, but not that big of a parking garage that they're gonna have.
and not 230 apartments.
Right.
But anyway,
Okay. Anything else?
is this commission and staff comment time?
Yeah.
Yes.
Can I ask you a question about ADUs?
Yeah.
Are they generally allowed in any residentially zoned area in Michigan City?
No, they're not.
They're not, but only in the historic district.
No, not quite yet. Not quite there.
Do
Not
they?
quite there. So depending on the zoning of the property,
Yeah.
they're either permitted by right. In most of the cases, that is where multifamily or is multifamily zoning. So you can have 2 units anyways. Anywhere where it's single family zoning, they require a special exception use, which can only be granted by the Board of Zoning Appeals. So generally, if it's a multifamily zoning, they can have it by right. If it's not, they need to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals. But there are certain requirements that need to be met as part of the zoning ordinance. So it's not something you can just kind of throw in.
So R1, no.
Unless you go to the Board of Zoning Appeals and ask for permission. And that is definitely not going to happen in R1E, which is the waterfront properties.
I can't put in my tiny house.
No, there's a size requirement as
She
well.
shed.
No, you'd have a he shed. I'm sorry.
Some shed.
So should I, now can I talk, I mean, should I say what I called you about today, or is that okay to talk about now?
Go for it.
Okay,
It's your
so-
comment.
My comment regarding the 624 and 622 Franklin, the signage I have no problem with. What I do have a problem with is that when the entity, whoever it was, came in and painted the facade. They painted it black, which it looks sharp, but I feel like it's a shiny black. Like it's not really a good, you know, it kind of is bouncing light and making it look weird. But what they did also is they painted over the actual placard that says the Brinkman.
Right, I was shocked. that you did
Yeah,
that.
it doesn't look good. It doesn't look good. It made me look, I'm uncomfortable with it. I don't like the way it looks.
Yeah. I'm surprised that she did that.
That's why I was telling Erin, I really don't feel like Carol
No, I
was
wouldn't
probably
say her.
involved in it. I feel like, you know, they just came over with a sprayer
Well,
and
they
just
should take
sprayed
it
the
off.
heck out of it. So I don't know how we address that.
So that is code enforcement as well.
Okay.
However, as I mentioned, when Simcoe Signs is leaving, they won't get their permit.
I know, so I don't know if he caught that, because you're like, it's not you, but.
I sent it over email. I
Okay,
also
cool.
emailed the property owner as well. Okay. So there just won't be a permit issue until
They do that.
It's a
I'll show
shame they
you
can't
this.
remove that. It does look terrible.
Take a picture of it.
I know what it looks like because I've
Yeah.
been over there. But
They painted.
Oh, my soul.
I don't want to break your heart, but yeah, and
just
then
did.
I know, and then they like this is what the number.
That
but see
reaction
that
says it all.
shiny?
Oh,
Isn't that a
it is.
really kind of a
That
funky?
should not happen.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Okay, so I feel bad, but I also feel like that's what we're here for, right? Is to make sure things like that don't.
And that, like I said, really surprised me. I went to church and there's.
I just think it was an oversight on her part. I really don't think she would have ever said, "Yeah,
So
go
I didn't
ahead."
see it, but is that something that's like it's in the brick? Is that?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah,
Oh,
I can show you too.
Yeah, you can see the
Like,
picture.
see, like, there's the numbers, right? I'm sorry. And then that's the Brinkman.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying.
Brinkman building. So that should be kind of highlighted.
Because like my building, the Zorn
Well,
family
yours
built
is-
that
yeah,
same
right,
concrete
yeah,
up
right,
there.
yours is-
Nobody
yeah.
ever touched that, but it's
No,
just, I was thinking it was something similar to that, but.
No,
Yeah, I mean, it's a simple little placard, you know, metal, I
But it's
think,
been
but
there for a long
but it's been
time.
there for a long time, so I just think it's being dismissed, so to speak, so I wasn't sure how to address it.
you did, and now. Aaron's got some more on his plate.
Well, he already knew it, yeah, so just.
Okay, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second the motion.
All right. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
that for now.